The first alien war ended before humanity ever knew it began, but the victor stayed behind. Alien King Kong wasn't here to destroy cities. He was here to claim the planet itself as his throne. When Earth's nations turned their weapons on him, he turned their own technology into his army. Superman and Spider-Man must lead a resistance where every strike risks making him stronger. And in the final battle, the question won't be who wins, but whether Earth survives at all. The first tremor was so faint most people mistook it for a passing truck. The second, one shattered windows. In the heart of Karachi's bustling port, cranes froze mid-swing, cargo containers rattled like dice, and the sea itself seemed to recoil. Then the sky split, not with lightning, but with a jagged wound of blinding white light. From it descended a silhouette so massive it dwarfed the tallest towers, each step sending shockwaves through the docks. Alien King Kong emerged, his colossal frame a fusion of living muscle and alien alloy. Every movement accompanied by the hiss of hydraulics and the hum of energy conduits beneath his skin. Golden runes pulsed across his armor-like hide, each symbol shifting as if alive. His molten eyes swept the city, not with mindless rage, but with the cold calculation of a conqueror who had already claimed countless worlds. The first strike wasn't against a building, it was against the ocean. Kong slammed a massive fist into the water, sending a wall of seawater surging into the port, toppling ships like toys. The message was clear. This was not an invasion for territory. This was a declaration of ownership. A sonic boom split the air as Superman streaked in from the upper atmosphere, intercepting a collapsing crane before it crushed a crowd of dockworkers. He set it down gently, eyes never leaving the alien giant. From the far side of the city, Spider-Man swung into view, weaving between skyscrapers before landing on the side of a cargo tower. Big, ugly, probably not here for the sightseeing tour, he muttered, already firing a webline to pull a trapped family to safety. Kong's gaze shifted to the two heroes. He didn't roar. He didn't charge. Instead, he moved with deliberate precision, closing the distance in 3 massive strides. Superman met him head-on, their collision sending a shockwave across the harbor. For a moment, it was a contest of raw strength, until Kong's eyes flared, unleashing a beam of searing heat identical to Superman's own. The blast forced the Man of Steel back, and in that instant, Kong's massive arm lashed out, firing thick, glistening tendrils from his forearm. Perfect replicas of Spider-Man's webs, only stronger and laced with a faint electric charge. One tendril snapped towards Spider-Man, who barely twisted away, the electricity crackling inches from his mask. "Okay," Spider-Man called out. "He's officially cheating." Superman dove again, striking Kong's chest with enough force to dent steel. The alien barely staggered. He was watching them, learning, adapting. Every move they made was another weapon for him to claim. Then, without warning, Kong stepped backward into the rift. The wound in the sky pulsed once, twice, and began to close. But before it sealed, a voice, deep, alien, and resonant, filled the minds of every human in the city. "Your world is mine." The light vanished. The harbor fell silent except for the distant wail of sirens. Spider-Man landed beside Superman, pulling his mask up just enough to breathe. "So that's bad, right?" Superman's gaze stayed fixed on the empty sky. "It's worse than bad." That was just his introduction. The Hall of Justice was lit only by the cold glow of its central display, the holographic map rotating slowly in the air. Superman stood with his arms folded, eyes locked on the data, streaming in, seismic readings, energy spikes, and a growing list of cities reporting strange gravitational anomalies. Spider-Man paced behind him, mask off, his voice quick and restless. "He didn't just leave," Peter said. "He's moving, testing, like he's mapping the planet." From the shadows, Batman stepped forward, a tablet in hand. "Not mapping, claiming. Every anomaly lines up with critical infrastructure, power grids, communication hubs, military command centers. He's marking his territory before the real fight begins." Superman's gaze hardened. In the mimicry, Batman tapped the screen, bringing up a rotating model of alien King Kong. The golden runes across his body pulsed in sequence. They're not just for combat data. They're a network, a living archive. Every time he encounters new tech or a new tactic, it's stored and integrated instantly. He's already adapted to your strength and Parker's agility. If he gets near our weapons systems, he'll turn them against us. Before they could respond, the map flared red. Live feeds filled the display. Islamabad under siege. Not by an army, but by the city's own automated defense drones, now moving in perfect coordination under Kong's control. Spider-Man pulled his mask back on. So he's not just stealing our moves, he's stealing our toys. Superman was already moving toward the launch bay. Then we take them back. Minutes later, the two heroes were in the thick of it. The streets of Islamabad were chaos, drones strafing rooftops, automated turrets swiveling toward civilians, and in the center of it all, Kong himself, towering over the city's skyline. He wasn't rampaging. He was orchestrating, every movement precise, every strike calculated to herd the population into open areas where his machines could corral them. Superman dove first, smashing through a cluster of drones, his heat vision slicing through their cores. Spider-Man swung in low, webbing turrets and yanking them off their mounts before they could fire. But Kong was already adapting. Drones began moving in unpredictable patterns, turrets firing in sync with his own attacks. A massive hand swept toward Spider-Man, forcing him to vault over it. "He's running this like a chess game," Peter called out. "And we're the pawns." Superman hit Kong with a blow that would have leveled a tank. The alien barely staggered, his molten eyes locking on the Man of Steel. The runes along his body shifted, and suddenly the drones began mimicking Superman's flight patterns, weaving through the air like miniature predators. Batman's voice cut through the comms. "You can't win this head-on. Force him somewhere his control is limited, somewhere his size is a disadvantage." Superman's eyes narrowed. "I know just the place." Kong's head tilted, as if he'd heard. Then, with terrifying speed, he leapt away, vanishing into the clouds. The drones fell still, their controls severed, but the damage was done, and the message was clear. He wasn't just here to fight. He was here to take the planet apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to defend. Night had settled over the world like a warning, but the planet was anything but asleep. In the skies above the Atlantic, Superman cut through the darkness at hypersonic speed, following a trail of gravitational distortions that twisted the clouds into spirals. On the ground, Spider-Man was already in motion, weaving through the streets of Cairo, where reports of phantom quakes had sent the city into chaos. This wasn't random. Alien King Kong was moving in patterns Batman had decrypted only hours earlier. Each location he touched wasn't just a target, it was a node in a planetary network. If Kong completed it, he wouldn't just control weapons or drones. He'd control the planet's infrastructure itself. Spider-Man's boots hit the roof of a centuries-old mosque, the stone trembling beneath him. He scanned the horizon, and there he was. Kong's massive silhouette loomed against the moon, his runes glowing like molten rivers. But he wasn't alone. Around him, construction cranes, armored vehicles, and even civilian cars moved in eerie unison, all under his control. "Yeah," Peter muttered into the comm, "he's officially upgraded from giant alien gorilla to giant alien gorilla with his own Transformer army." Superman's voice came through, calm but edged with urgency. "Keep him busy. I'm coming in from above." Spider-Man didn't wait. He launched himself forward, firing webs at the controlled vehicles, yanking them into each other to create a barricade. Kong barely glanced at the destruction. His focus was on a massive satellite uplink dish at the edge of the city. If he got to it, the network would be complete. Superman hit him like a meteor, driving him back from the dish. The impact cracked the ground, sending shockwaves through the surrounding streets. Kong responded instantly, his runes shifting, and suddenly the vehicles moved with frightening coordination, boxing Superman in while Kong advanced on Spider-Man. Peter vaulted over a tank barrel, firing a web bomb that detonated in a burst of blinding light. For a moment, Kong's movements faltered But then he adapted, shielding his eyes with one massive arm and swatting the tank aside like a toy. Batman's voice cut in sharply. He's minutes away from completing the network. If he does, every defense system on Earth will be his. You need to force him into the kill zone. Superman's eyes narrowed. Understood. The two heroes moved in sync. Superman driving Kong back with a flurry of blows, Spider-Man tangling his legs with reinforced web cables. The alien fought like a living storm. But step by step, they herded him away from the uplink and toward the narrow streets of the old city, where his size would work against him. Kong seemed to realize it. His molten eyes locked on them, and for the first time, he let out a sound, a deep, resonant roar that rattled the stones under their feet. The runes along his body flared crimson, and the controlled machines surged forward in a final, desperate push. Superman braced himself, Spider-Man reloaded his web shooters, and both knew the same thing. The next few minutes would decide whether the planet stayed free or became the throne room of an alien king. The trap was set beneath the jagged cliffs of Patagonia, where the wind screamed through canyons carved by ancient glaciers. Superman hovered above the narrow gorge, scanning the terrain with precision. Below, Spider-Man crouched on a rocky outcrop, his fingers brushing the trigger of a compact alien disruptor they'd salvaged from one of Kong's earlier attacks. The gorge wasn't just a hiding place, it was a kill zone. Batman's voice crackled over the comms. The magnetic anomalies here will interfere with his neural rune network. If you can keep him inside the canyon long enough, his control over machines will collapse. The ground began to tremble. Loose stones rattled down the cliff walls. Then, through the dust and wind, alien King Kong appeared, a towering silhouette framed by the dying light of the sun. His golden runes blazed brighter than ever, casting long, jagged shadows across the canyon floor. Superman dropped into his path, the impact sending a shockwave through the gorge. "This ends here," he said, voice like steel. Kong didn't answer. He lunged, the ground splitting beneath his weight. Superman met him head-on, their collision echoing like thunder between the cliffs. Spider-Man swung in from the side, firing reinforced web cables that anchored into the rock, trying to slow the alien's advance. The plan worked for a moment. Kong's runes flickered as the canyon's magnetic field began to disrupt his systems. His copied powers stuttered, heat vision veering off target, gravitational pulses misfiring. But even weakened, his raw strength was terrifying. One swipe of his arm shattered the rock Spider-Man clung to, forcing him to fire a desperate web line to another ledge. Superman pressed the attack, driving Kong deeper into the gorge. The alien roared, the sound reverberating through the stone, and slammed both fists into the ground. The canyon walls shook violently, sending boulders crashing down. Spider-Man dodged falling debris, landing beside Superman. "He's fighting the terrain as much as us. We've got him where we want him for now." Kong's eyes locked on them, molten gold narrowing to slits. The runes along his body pulsed erratically, like a system on the verge of overload. But instead of retreating, he surged forward, forcing them both back toward the canyon's heart, exactly where the magnetic interference was strongest. Batman's voice came through again, sharper this time. "You're close. Another minute in that zone, and his network will collapse completely. But if he brings the canyon down, you'll be buried with him." Superman's jaw tightened. "Then we finish it before he does." The three of them clashed again, the narrow gorge amplifying every blow, every roar, every shattering rockfall. The air was thick with dust and static, the magnetic field making the hair on their arms stand on end. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the canyon became a crucible, one that would either break Kong's power forever or bury Earth's last defense beneath the rubble. The last stand in the gorge. The canyon was dying. It didn't just shake, it groaned like the Earth itself was in pain. Massive slabs of rock sheared away from the cliff faces, tumbling into the abyss with bone-shaking crashes. The air was thick with dust and static, the magnetic field warping the light so that every movement seemed to shimmer. The wind screamed through the narrowing gorge, carrying with it the metallic tang of alien energy and the acrid scent of scorched stone. Superman hovered just above the fractured ground, his cape snapping violently in the turbulent air. His eyes locked on alien King Kong, who stood like a living mountain in the center of the chaos. The alien's golden runes flickered erratically, stuttering between molten gold and deep crimson, each pulse out of sync, a sign that the canyon's magnetic interference was tearing at his neural network. But even weakened, Kong radiated raw, terrifying power. Spider-Man clung to a jagged outcrop halfway up the cliff wall, his fingers aching from strain. Every muscle in his body was coiled tight, ready to spring. "He's glitching," he called over the comm, his voice ragged. "But he's still swinging like a freight train." Superman's reply was calm, but there was steel in it. "Then we take him down before the canyon does." Kong moved first. The alien lunged with a speed that belied his size, his massive fist smashing into the rock where Superman had been a heartbeat earlier. The impact sent shockwaves through the gorge, dislodging entire shelves of stone that crashed down in avalanches. Superman countered instantly, darting in low and driving a crushing blow into Kong's chest. The strike widened the crack in his armor, exposing more of the pulsing, molten-light core beneath. "That's our shot," Spider-Man shouted. He didn't hesitate. Launching himself from the wall, he swung low, weaving through falling debris with the instinct of someone who'd been dodging death his entire life. In his hand was the alien disruptor, a compact, unstable device they'd salvaged from one of Kong's earlier attacks. It was their only real chance to overload the core before Kong adapted again. Spider-Man landed on Kong's chest, the alien skin hot enough to burn through his gloves. He slapped the device onto the exposed core. It latched with a metallic snap, its surface lighting up in jagged pulses of blue and white. Kong froze for a fraction of a second, then the device discharged. The effect was immediate and violent. A shockwave of warped energy rippled outward, distorting the air like heat haze. The alien's mimicry collapsed in an instant. His heat vision sputtered and died. Gravitational pulses fizzled into harmless ripples, and the web tendrils dissolved into nothing. The golden runes along his body dimmed, their light guttering like candles in a storm. Superman didn't waste the opening. He drew in every ounce of solar energy his cells could hold, his body blazing until he was a living star in the canyon's darkness. The light reflected off the dust and shattered crystal, painting the gorge in gold and white. He struck. The punch landed dead center on the core, detonating in a blinding flash. The sound was less an explosion and more a deep, resonant crack, like the breaking of some ancient, unyielding thing. Kong's roar became a bellow that shook the canyon to its foundations, a sound of rage, pain, and something else, defiance. The core fractured, molten light spilling out in uncontrolled bursts. The magnetic field surged wildly, pulling everything toward the imploding center. The ground buckled, slabs of rock tilting and sliding toward the vortex. "Time to go," Spider-Man yelled, firing a web line toward a rising column of stone. Superman caught him mid-swing, the two of them shooting upward together, fighting the pull of the collapse. The wind tore at them, carrying shards of rock and crystal like shrapnel. Below, Kong's massive form was dragged toward the implosion, his molten eyes locked on them until the very last instant before he vanished into the churning void. The implosion consumed him. The light flared once, twice, then collapsed inward, sealing with a soundless flash. The canyon walls slammed together in a final, echoing crack that rolled through the mountains like distant thunder. They burst out of the gorge into the cold night air, landing hard on the snow-dusted plateau above. The ground trembled beneath their feet, then stilled. The wind howled through the empty cliffs, carrying away the last traces of battle. For a long moment, neither spoke. Superman's gaze stayed fixed on the place where the gorge had been, his expression unreadable. Spider-Man pulled off his mask, his breath fogging in the chill, and let out a shaky laugh. "So that's a win, right?" Superman didn't answer immediately. Finally, he nodded once. For now, they turned toward the extraction point, their silhouettes stark against the moonlit snow. The night closed in around them, the stars cold and distant overhead. Neither noticed the small, jagged fragment of alien armor half buried in the rubble behind them. Its runes pulsed faintly in the darkness, slow, steady, patient. A heartbeat. Extended cinematic detail. The aftermath. The extraction team arrived minutes later, a mix of Justice League operatives and local rescue crews. Floodlights bathed the plateau in harsh white light, casting long shadows across the snow. Medics moved in to check the heroes, but Superman waved them off, his attention still on the gorge. Batman emerged from the shadows, his boots crunching in the snow. Telemetry confirms it. The core's energy signature is gone. Whatever he was, whatever powered him, it's not active anymore. Spider-Man pulled his mask back on, more out of habit than necessity. Not active isn't the same as gone. I've seen enough horror sequels to know that. Batman's gaze flicked to him, unreadable. Then we prepare for the sequel. Superman finally turned away from the gorge. We'll need to track any residual energy. If even a fragment of that core survived. It did, Batman interrupted. Sensors picked up a faint pulse before the collapse sealed. Too small to be a threat now. But it's there. Spider-Man groaned. Great. So we just fought the giant alien gorilla apocalypse, and now we've got... what? Baby Kong. No, Batman said flatly. Worse. A seed. The word hung in the cold air. Superman's jaw tightened. Then we find it before it grows. The wind picked up, carrying with it the distant rumble of shifting ice. Somewhere far below, in the darkness of the sealed gorge, the fragment pulsed again, slow, steady, inevitable.